Now I'm just going to answer the question I think a lot of people are going to have for me if they haven't checked out Fate Extra Last Encore just yet. Is it worth watching? I think definitely so. Now I know there is a lot of Fate anime. I've seen most of the main series Fate anime and even the spin-off ones, and I know not everyone shares the same opinion as myself as it being one of their favorite series. They feel like it gets a little repetitive, it's the same formula time and time again, and I know a lot of people didn't like the last Fate anime, Fate Apocrypha. Now myself included, I didn't think it was as good as, say, some of the big series Fates like Fate Zero, but it was still a pretty fun anime. But this anime in particular, now this is based off of just the first episode. I did want to have episode 1 and 2 knowledge, but episode 2 had some pretty rough translation as of the recording of this video, so I'm just going to have episode 1's knowledge, so don't get mad if it gets worse later on. This is just solely based on the first episode. But watching the first episode, like, I knew it was going to be different just because Studio Shaft was doing it. And if you don't know anything about Studio Shaft, they are the studio who brought us series such as the Monogatari series, and that is the most out there, bizarre, wacky, stylized show you can probably see in the anime medium. And this series, honestly, like, within the first 2 minutes, I actually got the impression I was watching that series just because of how the visual direction it was going. Studio Shaft is a really interesting studio just because they know how to really get the viewer interested in what they're looking at. Like, there's so many times you'll watch a Shaft anime, and it could just be a character like Araragi in the Monogatari series, where he's just sitting in, like, almost a white room, but just the way they visually direct the series is just amazing. And there's just so many instances where, like, you'll watch a character in this anime, and you'll see something that you could have swore was just pulled from the Monogatari series and just reskimmed to look like a Fate anime, which isn't a bad thing. The thing that I think a lot of Fate fans have felt over the years is that, you know, you reached a peak with things like Fate Zero, and obviously Heaven's Feel is going to be that same style and quality, but still, you kind of get burnt out because it's more of the same. There's not a lot being changed. You can pretty much understand what's going to happen. You're going to summon a heroic spirit from the past, and they're all going to fight for the Holy Grail, which is a all-powerful device that will grant you your any desire and wish. But what makes this interesting is not just that it looks visually different. I mean, you can, like, even if you didn't know Studio Shaft was directing it, you would know Studio Shaft was making this show because it feels Shaft right off the bat, which is a perfect thing, because it's Studio Shaft and they know how to make your eyes glued to the screen. But it's how it also feels in terms of story. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know the full details, I believe the original game creator for this game, I think, wrote a new scenario for the anime, so it's not following the game, I think it's following, like, a new scenario, so you shouldn't see people say, well, in the game, it actually happened like this. I actually think it's a brand new scenario. I could be wrong, but that's just what I read once before. But you have a series that starts off completely different. Like, right off the bat, the visuals are kind of giving it away, like, something seems off. It almost feels like it's a simulation, and that pretty much seems like what it is. It seems like one of the wars just went totally wrong, and essentially all the people who failed or something along that nature are just, like, reliving, like, this mundane life at this school until someone eventually sees it break, or basically they see something going wrong, and then that kind of, like, starts this, like, massacre from all these weird soldiers, and it's just weird. Like, you don't know why things are happening the way they are. Like, you really don't know what the hell's going on, but ultimately, of course, the main character is going to stumble upon the solution and ultimately summon his servant, which is Red Saber, and of course the meme community, and just everyone loves their waifu in Fate. But still, it was really interesting watching the first episode because you didn't know exactly where it was going. Like, you kept seeing faces you've seen in past anime. You see Rin, you see Shinji, you see all the characters that you know from different Fate anime, but you know this is its own series, it's going to have its own story. But you knew Shinji was going to be a dick, and of course he was in this episode. But it's interesting how the pacing and flow to this show is working, because it never felt like a Fate anime. Like, the only thing that reminded me that it was a Fate anime were some of the reoccurring characters from previous series, and also the fact that they're servants. Everything else, it felt different, and that's what I think Fate needed. It almost needed, like, a sort of reboot to refresh the series, because for the most part it's been pretty much formulaic, just adding a couple new mechanics here or there, and granted, the remainder of the show could be formulaic to that point, but I think because you have a studio like Shaft behind it, it just, not visually just looks different, the story and how it's being presented also is. The way they just quickly cut around, like, I'm gonna have a bunch of screenshots just going through, and this is only from, like, 6 minutes of the episode. Like, you could have, like, captured 100 shots in this episode, and you would have just had your jaw on the floor. The way they transition, the way they use perspective, That's something I think Studio Shaft is best known for, is their use of perspective in their shots where you really get a sense of depth and scale, which a lot of studios I don't think really go to that extreme of showing, but I think because Studio Shaft does, it makes them stick out from a lot of the studios out there, and it just visually looked different, it felt different. And the characters, like, granted, I don't know too much about any of them right now and where they're going to take it in the show, but it made me intrigued enough that I was interested in seeing, like, I don't want this main character to die, I want him to get through this simulation or this time loop, whatever the hell is going on, and I want to see him partner up with his servant and then fight whatever Holy Grail War or whatever is being presented here. And it's quite interesting. Like, I just think if it was just the visuals that looked different and it was still very formulaic in the sense of, like, it just felt like another Fate Zero or a Fate Apocrypha, then I wouldn't be praising it as much as I am. But the story and the way they were presenting the characters and just the confusion, like, you had no idea what was truly going on in that first episode. And I think that's important because typically when you start a Fate anime, you know what's happening within the first episode. But the fact that it has this level of mystery and intrigue, it's like, this doesn't feel like a typical Fate anime, which is, I think, exactly what the Fate series needed. Maybe people aren't gonna like the new visual direction. Personally, I think you're crazy because I think it looks drop-dead gorgeous from character models, the backgrounds, and just the way it's being directed. But hey, opinions. But still, it's like, from the story to the characters to everything, this package, I think it's actually the best first episode of any anime in this season, and you know how much I love things like Violet Evergarden. But still, it's just a very unique series, it has me intrigued, it's not a series I'm gonna follow weekly. I've kind of realized that Fate Anime Weekly aren't my thing, I like to just be able to have all the episodes available to me and just binge them all, so that's what I'm going to do. But I had to get my thoughts out on the first episode, not just because it's Studio Shaft, but because a lot of people were asking me. But yeah, I really enjoyed this first episode. I think, in terms of the voice acting, it's what you would expect, but I do have to say, in the intro stuff, where you get to see a couple of the fight scenes there, the sound effects were really good. I really enjoyed what I heard from the sound effects in this episode, and I hope it carries through when you have more battles, because I actually thought it had a really good use of just sound effects for the actual sword play and things like that, which is something that I thought Fate Apocrypha didn't do that well, which was a couple of seasons back, so I'm glad to see that Fate Extra Last Encore is just fixing the mistake that I thought the last Fate anime had, and visuals, story, and characters, granted the characters could just become whatever as the show goes on, but it has this level of mystery and intrigue that I don't think anyone should sleep on this series, at least based on what I've seen. But let me know your thoughts. What do you think of the series overall, and how excited are you to see how it will continue? Or is this not your cup of tea and you want to drop off? Let me know. And before you leave, smack that like button, share your support. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.